35. Charlene walked around the house to the garage. The sight from the street was doubly reinforced by the mess in the side and backyards. The neat suburban yard had become a jungle. The lawn needed a baler. The shrubbery needed a chainsaw and a chipper, and the flower beds were overgrown with weeds that reached the eaves of the house. There were weeds growing out of the driveway. Charlene felt driven to take action. It was a shame to have such a nice place and have it go to seed. Straightening out the place was more important to her than meeting the man inside. It was fortunate that Benny had left the garage door open, as Charlene was anxious to get started. The garage was a revelation to her. There were three cars in it, but one end of it was a gardener's paradise. The wall had a rack of hand tools, all well maintained and well used. On a shelf were a box of work gloves and a wide-brimmed straw hat with a faded pink terry cloth hatband. Hanging on a hook was a faded cotton sundress. Charlene changed into it, pulled on a pair of gloves, and attacked the weeds in the driveway. The first weed put up a fight, and Charlene decided that pulling weeds out of Amosite was not a job to be done by hand. She walked into the garage and looked at the rack on the wall. A well-worn ice chipper caught her eye. There was no ice to chip in that part of Tennessee in recent memory, so its purpose must have been the weeds in the driveway. She tried it on a thistle. It sheared through the stem cleanly, flush with the pavement. It didn't take long to cut off all the weeds. She raked them all into a pile and dragged them into the yard. It was hot work. The sundress was sticking to her, and her hair was dripping. Worse yet, her underwear was chafing because it was nylon and didn't breathe or hold moisture. She went back into the garage and put it with her clothing. Without the underwear, the sundress took on a whole new character. It acted like a personal cooling unit. She drank a big glass of water and went out to attack the shrubbery. The mock-orange bushes were rubbing the gutters. She started with the lopping shears, but after a while, she seemed to be spending all her time and energy on one bush, with no real results except a large pile of brush. As she trimmed, she found the customary height of the shrubs and noticed that in places, the bushes had been layered and woven. She was impressed. She had read about the technique in books about England, but had never seen an example. Here was a textbook example of hedge weaving in Tennessee. She decided to leave the rest for later, as it was starting to get dark. Benny's tracks had become open sores in several places. The area around them was strangely blistered. There was a red welt around both of Benny's upper arms. It all came together. Benny was allergic to latex. The hose that the hospital staff used to find veins, the surgical gloves, even the hose used to administer the medication contained latex. Benny was being injected with latex 3 times a week. His body was fighting it and sloughing off the affected cells. Has anyone said anything about your arms? Yeah, they gave me script for antibiotics and told me to wash better. They even gave me some special soap. That's not an infection. That's an allergic reaction. Am I allergic to the cancer meds? I don't think so. I think it's the latex in their gloves and all the other hospital stuff that comes in contact with it. Why didn't they pick up on it? Simple. They're too busy. You're in there for what, 10, 15 minutes? Think about it. If they didn't read your chart, would they know how radical your surgery was? Yeah, I guess you're right. They deal with too many people every day to notice much. I go in, take my shot, and leave. I'm sorry. You shouldn't be sorry. They should. The welt around your arm is a dead giveaway. That hose is pure latex. You need to talk to your doctor when you go in again. How did you figure it out? I didn't sleep and read everything I could find on the medication and the administration of it. I stumbled onto an article in Journal of the AMA about latex allergies. They talked about looking for regular non-invasive points of contact and look for a reaction. I remembered the many IVs I started over the years and looked for the mark from the hose. As you can see, it is there. No one looked for it. I was beginning to get scared. Yeah, so was I. You worry about me, don't you? I have a lot of people I worry about. I brought one with me, but she felt that the yard needed her, so she stayed outside. She felt that the yard needed her? Yeah, the unkempt look seemed to upset her. She'll come in when she gets tired. It shouldn't take long. She hasn't been out for over a year. It's hot out there. I hope she'll be okay. By the way, I brought you something. I'm sorry I took so long with it, but it took a while to make it comfortable and work as it should. It should be easier to insert too, as I shortened the catheter and modified the end to slip in easier and stay inserted. I was just getting used to being functionally female. Lie to me, I like to be lied to. Seriously, I don't need to grope for the light switch to pee in the middle of the night. Who says you have to wear it at night? Yeah. By the way, it's all vinyl and silicone, I checked. That's a relief. I'd hate to have to order another one, even though that one doesn't match the original at all. Who would notice? Miran. Hey, it's okay. I didn't mean to hurt you. No, it wasn't you. I was such a negligent husband. I was never home. I thought that not fooling around was being faithful. I was wrong. Unfaithfulness is not just fooling around. It's being married to your work too. A career is worse than the cheapest whore. I subverted everything to the company. Sure, I was paid handsomely, but at what cost? It cost me my wife, the respect of my children, and my health. I put off a doctor visit for 3 years because it would inconvenience a client or the company's bottom line. I committed sexual suicide for the glory of my company. I did it gladly. I was working when my daughters eloped. I missed their weddings. I missed the birth of my grandchildren. I missed my son's ball games, PTA meetings, teacher conferences, and school plays. For what? So I could have a big ass house to rattle around in, and 3 cars to worry about, and a secure retirement that I really don't think I will live to enjoy. To get this, I sold my life. It wasn't you. You really miss her, don't you? Her clothes are mostly where she dropped them. I can't bear to move them because she put them there. I clean around them. I miss her laughter. I even miss arguing with her over things that she did that annoyed me. I miss the annoyances. I didn't give her the thing she needed most. I didn't spend enough time with her. I think that is what she died from. The train wreck was just how it happened. I wasn't there to protect her. You can't always be there. But I was never there. You were there to conceive 3 children, weren't you? Yeah. You always came home to her and were excited to see her. Extremely. We would spend entire weekends and what few vacations I took, pawing each other. Did you love her? What kind of question is that? Of course I did. I built her a nice house, brought her exotic gifts from all over the world. I still love her. I can't help it. I see her face everywhere. What did she want most? I guess to please me. Did she please you? Constantly, in big ways and small. If she saw you the way you are now, what would she do? She would nurse me and fuss over me and be sad because I'm sad. I think your guilt is hurting her memory. Do you think that she would approve of your wallowing in guilt here? Would she enjoy your sadness? It would hurt her. Don't be sad then. You are loved. Some people go through their entire lives without feeling love. You had it and knew what it was like. You gave it too, so someone else knew what it was like. We all make mistakes. That is why Jesus chose the way of the cross. We can all make mistakes, and through his love, learn from them. We can't stop loving when the object of our love is gone. Love is no good unless it's shared. The church people are sharing her love for them with you. What have you done for them? I really haven't thought about it. I've been too busy feeling sorry for myself. That's what I thought. What religion are you? I was raised a Catholic, but I got out of the habit. I stopped going to Mass when I started working on Sundays at Vanderbilt. I should really do something about it. I have done some terrible things. How could someone who has been so good to a total stranger do any really terrible things? You would never understand. Besides, we're talking about you, not me. You're the one who is fighting for his life. I sometimes wonder if it's worth the effort. What's the alternative? That is what I'm afraid of. Okay, end of argument. This friend of yours, how much does she know about me? She watched me fix your prosthesis. You're kidding. She freaked out. She knows. I told her about the night in Nashville right after it happened. She knows just about everything. It's okay, because she lives in hell too, just a different part. Why did you bring her? I couldn't leave her home alone anymore. She needs to meet you, and you need to meet her. It will be good for both of you. I don't know. Charlene won't bite you. I promise. Why didn't she come in first? Your yard freaked her out. The church people wanted to pitch in. I know, your pride got in the way. The neighbors have been nice about it. Charlene may solve your problem if you handle it right. Yeah, I heard her working outside. Miranda always liked to do the yard work. She said that gardening kept her sane. Did you know that she always had fresh flowers on the kitchen table, grown here, even in the winter? She must have been an amazing woman. I was such a rotten husband. She saw something in you. She stayed, didn't she? A soft tapping came from the cellarway door. Benny got up and opened it. Charlene walked into the living room. She was soaked in sweat. Her hair was matted to her head in the shape of the crown of the wide-brimmed straw hat. She was still wearing the faded cotton sundress, with nothing underneath, and the fabric clung to her body, emphasizing all of her attributes. Charlene's entrance was just too much for Benny. He started to weep uncontrollably. Charlene stood in the doorway, too scared to move. Marjorie broke the tension. Benny, I would like you to meet Charlene. She has been living with me for the last couple of years. Benny, are you okay? You are the most beautiful woman that I have seen for a long time. Miranda used to wear that dress when she worked in the yard. You will never understand the memories you brought back to me. I just wanted to use the bathroom. Top of the stairs to the left. Feel free to freshen up. There's a walk-in closet off the bathroom. Help yourself. Charlene hurried up the stairs. The bathroom was huge. It was done in marble and Italian tiles. The wall behind the double sinks was one solid mirror. She paused to look in the mirror as she passed. Her hair was matted with sweat, and there were leaves and twigs tangled into it. The sundress was soaked with sweat and was stuck to her body. Her hands were grass-stained, as were her knees. Her wrists were scratched clear to the elbows, with a network of tiny scratches. Her nails were dirty and broken. Her face was caked with dirt. Every inch of exposed skin was sunburned. She was convinced that Benny had completely lost it. As she sat on the toilet, she thought about the man downstairs. He looked old and tired. His complexion was terrible. He had no hair anywhere she could see. She understood Marjorie's insistence that she come along. He needed her to fill needs that Marjorie couldn't. She had the vulnerability that Marjorie had lost through nursing and maintaining medical detachment. She was educated and cultured. Marjorie grew up in hotels among chambermaids. There was only one thing. Charlene was terrified. She turned on the shower and struggled out of the wet sundress. The hot water felt good. The first water that ran off her was black and full of leaves and twigs. The sunburn on her arm stung when the water flowed across it. She could see the neckline of the dress etched into her skin by the summer sun. As she washed, she puzzled over Benny's reaction. Why had he started to cry when he saw her? Why did Marjorie insist that she be there? Why was Benny different from all the other men that Marjorie had found in bars that she would want to take care of him? Charlene dried herself off and walked into the closet. The selection there rendered her catatonic. How could she choose? In a drawer, she found a bra and some panties. They fit perfectly, just as the sundress in the garage did. She walked into the bedroom, looking for a comb and a brush, and the picture on the dresser stopped her in her tracks. It was like looking into a mirror. The only difference was hair color. The woman in the picture was light blonde. Benny's reaction made sense. She felt guilty for not trying to comfort him, and she was wearing the woman in the picture's clothes. Marjorie had told her some of the story, and the pieces fell together. She guessed that Marjorie hadn't noticed the similarities because she hadn't really looked at the picture. She sat at the mirror and worked on her hair. She hadn't noticed how long it had gotten. It had been almost 2 years since it had been cut. Damp, it fell to the small of her back. Because of the long time out of the sun, it had grown in almost auburn, fading to yellow at the ends. She brushed and thought about a course of action. Marjorie was right about two things. First, she should get out of the apartment. Living with just one person, with fleeting contact with one or two others, was not healthy. Second, the man downstairs needed someone who was not a nurse, or a friend/acquaintance of his late wife to communicate with. Fred was nice, but she didn't like the way he looked at her. There seemed to be too much lust in his heart. Besides, Marjorie would be a better match for him. The only problem with that relationship was Fred's fixation on Charlene. This could even work, she thought to herself. She could stay here and straighten out the yard. The house is big enough to maintain a distance from the man downstairs until what? Until he died? Until she got her head together enough to go out among people again? Until she formed an attachment/relationship with the man downstairs? Fear crept in around the corners of her consciousness again. Until was a very scary word to roll around her mind, almost as scary as if. If was the scariest word of all. If, with all of its pregnant possibilities, all of it. Charlene shuddered. She didn't even know the man's name. Sure, she looked like his late wife, but how far could that take a relationship? Did she feel threatened? It really didn't feel like it if she did. Was it a feeling of inadequacy? Sure, she'd never been good at relationships. People, men in particular, were too unpredictable for her. It was too hard to figure out what they wanted. When she figured it out, the man in question was gone to another. With Charlene, relationships were measured in minutes. She never knew what to say when a man approached her. Worse yet, they were always staring at her. When she would notice and look back, they quickly looked away. She would hear them talking, and when she tried to hear what they were saying, they would stop. It had always been that way. Her mother told her to be coy and shy, and that a lady never makes the first move. Marjorie scared her. She flirted. She did it shamelessly. She did it constantly. She used her eyes and her hands. Men responded to it. She wondered how she could do it and not be afraid, as she was so very small. She couldn't understand how Marjorie could reach out and touch a strange man. She couldn't even touch a familiar man or allow herself to be touched. When she helped Marjorie carry Fred to the motel, it was very difficult for her, even though Fred was unconscious and unresponsive. The man downstairs probably wanted to touch her. Most men did. She felt herself getting dizzy again. She cupped her hands together and breathed into them. Hell, it's a big house and he's sick. How can he possibly hurt me? She said to herself. The lightheadedness fled to the corners of her consciousness. She stared at the contents of the closet and fought to make a choice. It was so hard to dress in another woman's clothing, especially when she knew that the other woman was dead. Hey girl, did you die up there? Can't a lady fix herself up a little? We're not talking about a complete makeover. I know. You coming down? Yeah, soon as I get dressed. You're staring at the clothes, aren't you? There's a lot of them. Anything there should fit. That's the trouble. Everything here looks like it was made for me. Just grab something and come down. If you stay up there too long, you'll freak yourself out. I can only nurse one person at a time, and Benny is in rough shape. Okay. Or don't you? Charlene found some sweats in a drawer. She pulled them on and looked at herself in the mirror. She looked frumpy enough to not attract too much attention. This will be a good place to hide, she said to herself. She tied her hair back into a ponytail and considered her reflection in the mirror. She was still afraid, but she knew that she had to cope. She had been a burden to Marjorie for too long, and this nice house needed her. 36. What's with Charlene? She's not very talkative. You don't know her yet. She ran upstairs so fast, and she's been there for quite a while. She probably got catatonic in the closet. She does that a lot, and that's a strange closet for her. I can't get over the resemblance. What resemblance? You don't see it? I don't know who she's supposed to resemble. Except for the hair, she is a dead ringer. For who? Don't you see it? No. Here, look at this picture. Oh my God, I didn't know. No wonder you started to cry. I'm so sorry. No, no, don't be. It's okay. It's just like you and... Oh yeah, I forgot. Do you think she knows yet? My bedroom is full of pictures of her. Why would she go in there? I don't know, but the closet door is open and it opens into the bathroom too. We'll find out when and if she comes down. If she's afraid of men. Why? Long story. Are there any short ones about you? Are there any about you? Hey, that's a good one. I should write that one down. Yeah, who'd read it? Maybe my kids after I'm gone. From what you say, everything not worth instant money would end up as landfill. No, Ted is a lot like me. He just doesn't know it yet. You seem pretty confident. The last couple of conversations I've had with him. Hell, the girls haven't even called since they saw me in the hospital, and he calls every so often. What conversations? He is going through the same kind of crisis I went through when I took the job with corporate. What do you mean? Time versus money. He's worried about his marriage, I'd bet. Yeah, plenty. Do you think he'll ask your advice about it? I don't know. I never was around enough to get him used to confiding in me. That's a tough one. Yeah, he's trying to do it alone like I did. Money doesn't buy time. To sell all your time is to sell your soul, and you can't buy it back. Do you think it will happen to him? I hope that his childhood spent at equating a picture with dear old dad teaches him something of the value of time with his family. At least he had a nice house in a nice neighborhood, and it was a stable place to grow up. I grew up in motels. I don't think you understand life in the suburbs, and as suburbs go, this is Sticksville. What do you mean? In the suburbs, until you get a license, you live in your mother's car. Everything is a 10 or 15-minute drive. There are no sidewalks and no mass transit. The developers try to get the maximum dollar per square inch, so the streets are too narrow for bicycle or pedestrian traffic. Everyone is in a car. I didn't realize it until I had to walk home from the hospital and didn't know anyone here. I've owned this place for 22 years, and I still don't know any of my neighbors. Yeah, it's even a nasty walk from the bus stop. Anyway, let's just say that this privileged lifestyle isn't as privileged as most would make it out to be. I thought that life in the suburbs was the American dream. It's a sales pitch, a gimmick to make money. Once you buy one of these places, you work yourself to death to make the payments or sell your soul. For what I paid for this mausoleum, I could have bought a block of apartments in Memphis or Nashville and walked to work and would have had time left to spend with my family. I would have had time to go to doctors, been able to go to the theater, or hang around with friends. Business associates are not friends. I haven't seen a soul from work since I got sick, and I spent more time with them than I spent with my wife. Do you think Ted will make the right decision? Square inch, so the streets are too narrow for bicycle or pedestrian. All we can do is pray and watch. Where does he live now? Minneapolis, and I hope he stays there and doesn't get any bright ideas about suburban life. Isn't it cold there? Yeah, but it's a cohesive community because of it. The cold is the thing they have in common. It's a shared experience. It makes it a friendlier place. What makes you think that he'll choose suburban life? The same reason I did. From the time we wake up in the morning to the time we go to sleep at night, we are immersed in the sales pitch of the suburbs. Look at the setting of all the commercials. How about all the crime dramas? Elevate the suburbs and make the cities look dangerous. I fell into that trap in 1970. Then I moved here, further out than I lived before. If Sterling hadn't gone liberal arts, I'd be dead right now. When Sterling was just a little Baptist Bible college, there was nothing around here. A good stiff breeze would have blown this town away. Now we have a hospital and a halfway decent town, on par with Ithaca, Syracuse, and Gettysburg. GM setting up in Spring Hill didn't hurt either, nor did Nissan Motors. When I moved here, there were only about 5,000 people here. 1,000 of them were the Sterling Baptist Bible College and the support thereof. Now, the town is still the same size, but there are about 50,000 people in the unincorporated area around it. In town, everyone knows everyone else. Out here, nobody knows anyone. Some lucky dirt farmers or cattle feeders made a killing out here. They planted a final crop of houses, and the suckers bought them like crazy. I always dreamed of having a nice house like this. Trust me, it isn't the paradise you imagine it to be. First off, you have to drive. Without a car, there is no food, clothing, or social life. Even the churches are still in town. Maintenance is constant. Mow the lawn, clean the gutters, trim the hedges, patch and seal the driveway. Paint this, patch that. It all costs money. In the city, the landlord takes care of most of it. The rent is a bargain, usually, because all the time spent on feeding a house can be spent otherwise, instead of feeding a fashion statement. I really feel guilty leaving Miranda and the kids out here for long periods while I was on the road. Miranda needed people. There weren't very many people out here, and they were too busy to socialize. Now, do you understand my concern? Wow, I never looked at it that way. I wish I could let Ted in on it before he falls prey to the American nightmare of home ownership. Don't you get a break on taxes? That's an illusion, too. To support a house-based lifestyle, you have to earn more money to pay for it. More money, more taxes. It's not rocket science. The government benefits tremendously. The town tax base increases because of the additions to the grand list. The feds benefit because of the increased income of the homeowner, necessitated by the increased expenses. Rare skills and talents help. Then there is the lie about increased value over time. If you calculate the money paid in taxes and interest, as well as maintenance, you get a figure bigger than the increased value caused by inflation and the steady rise in real estate. In real terms, a homeowner loses money on the deal. Charlene walked from the closet into the bedroom. The bed looked more inviting than a bed had looked to her in a long time. The exertions outside, followed by the hot shower, caused a great feeling of lassitude. I'll only take a short nap, she said to herself. She fell across the bed and was senseless before she landed. 37. The monster was gone. He put it in the mailbox 2 months ago. On Marjorie's advice, all he did was run spell check through it. Numbering the pages took longer than it did to write it. He included the original chapters in it, but in the context of the new piece of work, they shone like diamonds on black velvet. The context was one of internal angst, leavened with bitterness and sarcasm. It talked about the thousands of little murders that everyone covers up every day. It mentioned all the little dishonesties which form the warp and woof of our culture. It dwelt on the personal trail of chaos and destruction each person leaves in his wake as he passes through his life. It was the judgment, replete with the four horsemen of the apocalypse. It was everything that flew forth from Pandora's box and then some. But it wasn't preachy. It wasn't glib. It wasn't coached in psychological jargon. It wasn't scholarly in tone. Best of all, it wasn't a gothic potboiler that is once read and then forgotten. The pain was real. The experiences were universally close to home. It was hysterically funny in places, as humor is the best antidote for pain. It was revealing, not just about Fred, but about the American culture as well. He followed Frances' suggestion, and it flowed out as fast as he could type. As he was running spell check through it, he couldn't believe that he had written it, much less written it in 64 hours, non-stop, except for potty breaks. It was 434 pages long, without the original chapters. Those were edited into it after spell check. It took 3 reams of paper and 2 printer cartridges to print it, and it killed his printer. He had to go out and buy a new one to finish the job. Marjorie wouldn't let him send it on disc, as she felt that it was much more effective on paper, and he already had a contract and an advance anyway, so he owed them paper. The finishing of the manuscript was cathartic to him. When he started, he felt himself to be a misogynist and persecuted from every side. He saw no reason for optimism in the world. After he mailed it, he realized that nothing was personal. It was simply the way life is, and everyone really means the very best. But people are all too human, including Fred. He had inflicted his share of hurt, too. His trail was just as bloody as everyone else's. He sat in his booth in the diner, drank coffee, and waited, with his trusty yellow legal pad close at hand. The book had given him many ideas for future projects. He saw the need for a manual to steer around the things that cause harm to one's fellow travelers. The book laid bare the need. He remembered the movie Beetlejuice, where the Maitlands found a book, written like stereo instructions, explaining the workings of the afterlife. It was an excellent running gag because it had a lot of truth in it. What if there was a manual for life on Earth? When he mentioned it to Sol Schulman, he laughed for a solid 10 minutes and said, Moses brought just such a book from the mountain, and people have been arguing about it ever since. Fred blushed and laughed too. But Soul, that was before technology. Do you think people have changed? Well, some, maybe. When and where? I guess you're right, they haven't changed. But suppose that you took the Torah and maybe updated the language a little bit. Reflect the scientific discoveries that have occurred since, as well as a little bit of history, like the Holocaust, the American civil rights struggle, and the atomic bomb. Do you think it would make a difference? Huh, why are you so doubtful? Mankind isn't terribly good at following instructions. Leaders are easier to follow. A society will follow a charismatic leader to hell rather than follow the right instructions, even though they are tried and true. Soul, it doesn't really matter if people follow the instructions or not. It only matters if people will buy the book. That's heresy. You are thinking on a mercenary, materialistic, selfish, and commercial level. This is America. If nobody buys it, it won't get printed and distributed. If it doesn't get printed and distributed, it won't get read. Good point. It has to have a catchy title. You mean a hook? Yeah, a hook for a book, for money for a crook. You have been away from the synagogue for too long. When was the last time you were there? Well, I rest my case. However, how many of those people came to see you while your wife trashed you in court and left you homeless? How many of them invited you over for dinner? Commiserated with you over coffee? They have their own lives. That's everyone's excuse. I would have died were it not for two strangers who found me dying in a parking lot and nursed me back to health. It wasn't the self-righteous people from the shul. It was a 90-pound Vietnamese girl and her English teacher roommate. They helped me because nobody helped them when they needed it. The Vietnamese girl couldn't look the other way, like every good American does. So, hopefully, the book I sent to the publisher a couple of months ago will be a wake-up call. It has more hooks than a tackle box. It is the story of my awakening. I was asleep, sleeping like most of society, going through the motions on automatic pilot, while my life slipped ineffectually away. I wrote what I thought was the great American novel, which you agree is a piece of claptrap. I was so buried in the creation of that piece of trash that I stopped seeing the world around me. My wife left me. She loved me, but I was too busy to notice. So, the publisher liked it so much, they wanted another book. They wined me and dined me to sell the first one. It sold 500,000 copies. When I tried to write the second book, I locked up solid. I did 4 mediocre chapters. As I was suffering from terminal writer's block, I had this near-death experience. It was a wake-up call, though I didn't know it yet. I came in here to hide from the computer afterwards and ended up sitting with Francis. He told me to write about the experience. It was the easiest writing I have ever done. I should be hearing something soon. Fred left the diner and headed home. He thought about his conversation with Soul. He really shouldn't have been so self-congratulatory. Soul deserved better. Soul had been with him through it all and had suffered even more insults and tragedies than he did. Soul was a genuinely good person. People took advantage of him. He didn't seem to mind, but nobody was ever around when he needed help, except for Fred. Fred resolved to make it up to him. Tomorrow. There was a package on his mailbox. He tore it open, and in it was a copy of his new book. The picture on the dust jacket was the same picture as the one on the other book. The dust jacket had a caricature of a cranky old man with a crooked cane sitting on his front porch throwing beer cans. The title was in black type across the top, and his name was across the bottom. It had a delightful heaviness to it. He leafed through it and looked at the layout and graphics. This was no galley proof. It was the real thing. It had a $9 suggested retail inside the dust jacket. It had a first-rate look and feel to it. It felt open to. I realized that I was simply the product of all my decisions, as well as the decisions of those around me. I needed to own my decisions and decide what to do about everyone else's. It was a hard revelation. I had decided in the past not to make any decisions, and that in itself was a decision of great import. By making that particular decision, I had decided that everyone else's decisions carried more weight, and I was subverting all my own wants, needs, and desires, not for the greater good, but just plain stupid laziness. I had contributed nothing of importance because I was too lazy to take charge of my own life. No wonder I couldn't write a coherent sentence. No wonder I nearly died from food poisoning. No wonder that I was in a strange place with no idea how I had gotten there and no idea how to get back to my life. That is, if it could be honestly called that. I kept looking away so I could avoid being hurt. I kept looking away so I wouldn't feel used. I kept looking away and walked off a cliff. I was running on autopilot. I had blinded myself to the world around me. No wonder my muse had fled. I let all those people hang out and schmooze. I was too weak to send them packing when they started to take liberties. I didn't have enough self-confidence or self-worth to stand up for myself and say no. I had to eat a $3,000 phone bill. There were often strangers sleeping in my bed. There was never any food in the house, even though I was always buying groceries. It was all my decision to let it happen. I resolved that moment to own it. It was scary to own such a terrible mistake. I was afraid people would feel less towards me, tease me even, if they found me out. I was alone because I had decided to ignore my wife, who loved me since childhood, who left me because I wasn't loving her back. That was my decision too. I could see the pain it caused. In both of us. She fled to Israel. I chose not to answer her letters. I chose to pass up a second chance with her because I couldn't muster the gumption to decide what to do about her. It wasn't even for another woman. Getting a get in the mail hurt. I could have decided to avoid that pain, but I was somewhere else mentally. I resolved to do better. I resolved not to feel guilty or ashamed. I resolved to do better, to take the bull by the horns and be active about my life. I resolved to stop letting things slide. Fred looked at those words in print. He vaguely remembered writing them. They looked different in a bound book with a price tag on it. They had a good rhythm to them as he read. They had a great cadence. They made him feel proud. His first opus never made him feel that way. There was no uplift in it. It was plot-driven character by, for, and about cardboard people in a cardboard setting. He spent way too much time on it, and it was sophomoric. He was glad that he had embraced this second chance to do it right. The people and situations here were real. They felt real. They had real motivations. They were mostly petty motivations, but real nonetheless. That was a good decision, he chuckled to himself. Marjorie's voice was on his answering machine. Fred, Charlene has moved out. Give me a call. Fred dialed Marjorie's number and got her answering machine. Hey, little girl, they sent me a copy of my book. Come on over and see it. He hung up the phone and muttered something about stupid games. He was very excited, and the person who had helped him pull off the great coup was unavailable. He decided not to let it bother him. Suddenly, Marjorie took on a whole new meaning to him. How could he have been so blind to it? She had been sending him all the right signals for months. He had Charlene on his mind, so he ignored the signals. It was hard not to have Charlene on his mind. He dreamed of running his fingers over her freckles. He dreamed of exciting both her body and mind. She looked right through him, or stayed as far from him as she could, and still be in the same room. Marjorie, on the other hand, always laid a reassuring small hand on his thigh, stroked his cheek, or leaned really close to him. She had a way of demanding and getting his total attention. She had made love to him. He knew it and wished that he could remember the experience. 38.